they're better now. Oh, thank goodness. And that's on virus going around. This is bad. Not a lot of people. Yep.
She was a barrel when you walked in here, and I her name is here, she recognized her. But she would have been
So much older.
I would say it was about 20 years that she could be over.
Okay. Where was she?
I'm trying to
Where did you see her? Yeah.
They wouldn't let me do that. It's gonna come to over the weekend. I'll find out. I'll get one.
Yeah, I wonder if I know her. Thank you.
No.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Ready to get started?
It's all yours. Okay, again, can't do much meet and greets. I'm going to try to see if I can start off. We have a couple people want to recognize. Thank you all for being here. I often start off by announcing our elected officials that are present. Currently, we have our mayor here, Julia Ratafrata, that's present. We got Alder Randy Udell, that's present. I don't see any of the other elders. We got Police and Fire Commissioner Donald Dancer. You keep flagging me around. Am I going the right way? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I'm like, do I go left or do I go right? And that's all we, for the other ones that are here, again, thank you very much. Thank Fire Station 3 here and Chief Joe Pavlmacher, who gave us the opportunity to use their space. We don't have space, and that's what we're going to be talking about with you. The presentation, most of it's going to be run by future Captain Ed Hardwick. We have Deputy Chief Matt Leahy that's also going to be presenting, and future Captain Andrew McCarthy. So without wasting too much of your time, we'll get it started. Thank you. Ed.
All right, thank you, Chief, and thank you, first of all, for everyone for joining us tonight. It's great to see folks interested in this project so that we can help share some information about the need and why we think this is a crucial project for the city. So thank you for taking time out of your evening. As the Chief mentioned, I'm Lieutenant Ned Hartwick. I'm just about to hit my 15-year mark with the city. So my role right now, I supervise basically everything in the department that doesn't wear a uniform, to include our investigations, dispatch, our community service officers, court liaison, and our part-time social worker position, which I'll touch on in a minute. So tonight's agenda, I'll admit, is a little ambitious to run through everything, but there's a lot of information and I don't want to leave anything out. We will have opportunities to ask questions, but I'm going to try to contain them in these chunks so we don't get too far down the road, and if we can stay on task, we've run over, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time this evening. So we're going to talk about these chunks here. We'll run through the background and current process first, move into some programming, and we'll summarize with the financial impact and summary. So some key points I just want to talk about and have everybody keep in mind as we run through all these slides tonight. The police department and City Hall have exceeded capacity. City Hall was constructed in 1999 and has served its purpose well, but we are both out of office space, out of a lot of spaces. If you haven't seen the news, we are the fastest growing city in the state, and so a part of this is planning for the future. And this is a city project. It's not just a police department project. And so it being a city project, it's going to benefit the entire community. We're also going to touch on the fact that this has been a 10-year discussion. This is not something that happened yesterday or the process that started last month. This has been a 10-year discussion. And hopefully, if this process goes well, this is going to be a discussion that has results that last well into 20 years and accommodate our needs for the long term. So Another few points that I want to keep in mind as we move through this presentation. This is an investment. This is an investment in our community. This is an investment in the people that serve our community. So we're going to talk about all of these things throughout the presentation. Just keep them top of mind. So we're going to talk about enhanced and more efficient service. We're going to talk about a more capable and competent police force, and that's really important right now. We'll talk about why that's crucial. We need to meet our current and future space needs, and that will avoid future costs. Building more in the future is just going to cost more. We're going to talk about increased retention, and that's going to save us money. We're not constantly having to hire people. Potential savings through reductions in risk and loss. Having a better trained police department is hopefully going to help us reduce that chance of risk and loss due to a significant event. Revenue from training components. We're going to talk about the training components in the facility and the potential revenue that may come from those. And then additional space for our community. There are amenities that are accessible for the community. And smaller but significant for a lot of people and significant for us for a number of reasons, a decrease in our idling vehicles. So to give some context to this conversation, we're going to talk about the road here. In 1999, City Hall is finished. The police department moves into the lower, basically the lower two levels of City Hall. Has anyone who's been to the police department besides, all right, I won't ask why, so you know that it's not the easiest to find, right? We've increased our signage, but it's not always the easiest to find. So we're on the kind of the back half of the building, the lower two levels. So anytime there's a city construction project, we want to be looking at least 20 years, right, to meet our needs. We don't want to build something that we're going to have to immediately replace. And hopefully that building's going to last for much longer than that. So 14 years into it, the city commissions a space needs study to address the space needs of the police department and City Hall, realizing that we're already about to outgrow this space. In 2016, after that space needs study was completed, this project, the police department project, first it gets mentioned in the city's CIP budget, which is the capital improvement plan, which addresses large spending like buildings, highway infrastructure, and things that aren't just normal operating expenses. So please keep that in mind. 2016 is when this first appears in the budget. That wasn't yesterday. That was a few years ago now. It's hard to believe. Space needs study. It's very extensive. You can view it on the website that we have, and you'll have an opportunity to capture that at the end of the presentation. But it was a very well done analytical study of staffing and space needs. It looked at several horizons going out 20 years. And now keep in mind, 20 years from 2014, 2015, when that was completed, we're already kind of behind the curve there. It did identify and examine the possibilities of an add-on to City Hall to accommodate the police department and a standalone facility. Assuming, looking at numbers for a standalone facility, these are the space needs that they projected for the future. So you can see our current square footage, gross square footage, is 17,783 square feet. That was our square footage in 2000. They projected that by 2020, which is now 4 years ago, again, hard to believe, we would need 60,000 square feet, standalone facility. Going all the way out to 2035, almost 80,000 square feet. Now this is gross square footage, so this includes unusable space like wall cavities, elevator shafts, and things that we can't necessarily occupy, but it gives you a good perspective of where it stands. And for reference, the library is 60,000. Yeah, around 60,000. In the space needs study, they identify several immediate space needs. Immediate, things that needed to be addressed right away. Chief among them were the evidence components of our building. So in the basement level of City Hall is where we store our evidence. That was identified as an immediate space need. I tell this story frequently, but when we have a large seizure of marijuana in particular, due to the fact that that space was not designed properly with ventilation, you can smell that marijuana during a city council meeting, or when you come in for city business. You can smell it up on the third floor of the building. The armory, where we store our ammunition that we need for training and for duty use, is in the basement level, exposed to humidity and water. Not ideal, and it's too small. We're also running out of office space and conference rooms back in 2014. So you'll see some numbers, the number of people that we've added since then, and you can only imagine that we've lost even more space to conference and to have offices. The last thing that I'm reminded of, especially this time of year, is the indoor parking. So when I worked night shift, I would have to often go out to my car at the beginning of my shift at 11 o'clock and scrape off sometimes inches of snow and ice. Now imagine if I get dispatched to an emergency call for service, only to walk out to my car and find that there's 2 inches of ice or snow on top of my windshield. Now once I get in that car, that computer that is providing critical information to me, that might take 20 minutes to boot up because it's been sitting outside in the cold all day. So not ideal. And you'll notice too, if you take a look in here, the fire trucks, they're parked inside, right? The ambulance parked inside, right? Because whenever that call comes in, they need to jump in those vehicles and they need to get out of here. So I have not included this previously, but I want to share this again. This is from a presentation we did earlier or late last year. These are the details of the CIP timeline. So this goes back to 2017. So the CIP budget is done in 10-year cycles. And this is all the discussion that's been happening from 2017 all the way up to this year's cycle. So this is, again, not a new project. It's been discussed by several councils. There have been modifications dropping that number down to, or starting with 25, moving that number up to 35 million, and then dropping it back down to 25, adding it back up to 35. The discussions talk about reducing the size, increasing the size. It's been going on. This is not, again, not a new concept. So we're going to talk about the current process and zoom in a little bit more closely to the timeline here. So January of last year, there's $25 million in that CIP budget. And Mayor, if you want to correct me, there's about $110 million roughly, or $100 million in the CIP budget for over a 10-year cycle. So $25 million in that CIP budget, and again, that covers things like road construction projects, building projects, those large expenses. So again, previously there were $35 million in there. In April, the Common Council, after a competitive bid process, approved the architectural design firm for this project. That's FGM Architects. They're a firm, they have several offices across the country. They've done over 300 police facility projects. So they know what they're doing. They've seen things happen in communities. They've seen similar situations of all sized communities. In June, FGM began working with us, meeting with all of our work groups, anyone that's going to be using this facility from the city's perspective, meeting with other city staff. In July, the Common Council now approves the next element of this project, the construction management company, again after a competitive bid process. And this company, their job is to provide the construction, the professional expertise related to the construction of the building. This firm is not able to construct the building now because of their role. They are essentially an advisor as to what's going on in the field. Also in July of last year is the first meeting of the Police Facility Oversight Committee. Now this is a committee that's put together. It's chaired by Alder Jim Wheeler. There are citizens on this committee. There are city staff and police department members on this committee. This meeting, the Police Facility Oversight Committee, much like any city meeting, is agended, it's noticed to the public, and anyone can attend and watch it. Our friends from Fact TV here that are recording this meeting and broadcasting it live and on Zoom, they record all of our city meetings. So anyone could attend these meetings, view these meetings starting back in July. In November, in this last year's cycle of the CIP budget, an additional $10 million was added back into the project, bringing the budgeted total back up to $35 million. Throughout this timeline, too, I'll point out that the Police Facility Oversight Committee was meeting. I think they met for a total of 3 times over the course of the fall, summer and fall. Getting closer here, December last year, Pepper Construction, the construction management company, delivered that estimate. What we'll talk about where the current estimate for the facility stands. And in January, this next council meeting, we were originally tentatively scheduled to consider the schematic design. And when I say schematic design, if you look over here to your left, my right, you'll see what most people would call blueprints. So the bigger picture schematic design is what we're looking at approving there to include all the square footage. Now, we'll talk about some things that have changed since then, but that's the timeline. So moving forward from here, ideally, under ideal circumstances, the next phase would be a public meeting for design development. So in November, we had a public meeting for the schematic design. Design just fills in more details. Common Council approves it in February under ideal circumstances, and in July of this year, bidding would open for construction. September, fall, getting into fall of this year, the Common Council ideally takes action to approve a bid, and then from there, construction process starts. And in May of 26, we move out of City Hall. Now remember, this is a city project. We move out of City Hall, so that's going to free up almost 18,000 square feet of space for City Hall and move into our new facility. Now, a few things to point out. Not only has this gone before a Common Council and the Police Oversight Committee, this project has also been in front of the Board of Public Works, the Finance Committee, Resource Conservation Committee, and the Fitchburg Center Committee, which focuses on the Fitchburg City campus and includes representatives of Promega. Some questions have come up recently as more information about this project has come out, public engagement, and making sure the community is aware of what's going on. I haven't had a chance to check the sign-up sheet here to find out how people know about this, but I would imagine there's a few different means in which people are finding out about these things. We have been doing our best to get the information out, but it's a challenge in any capacity to inform our community about what's going on. It is a challenge. The bigger challenge is for people to want to get them engaged, to get them to care, right? I watch city council meetings, I attend city council meetings, and on a regular basis, there's one or two people in there. Even when we're talking about the city budget, the CIP budget, spending $110 million for the CIP, $35 million. So we're doing our best. But this is a team effort. We rely on our neighborhood associations. We rely on our elected officials. We rely on everyone in here to help spread the word. Because again, this is a facility not for the public to occupy, hopefully. We hope that you don't come and visit us. But if you do, we want that to be a good space, a space where people feel safe. But this is really about the people that serve the community. So before we get into programming, does anyone have any questions about the process, where things stand, what the past leading up to this is, how long this has been going on? Yes?
The facilities study, since it's been going on for several years, I just assume that they compare city of similar sizes and facility of other police safety facilities, and that taken into account.
Yes. So I can tell you, looking at a couple other similarly sized cities, or what we consider to be similarly sized, and even smaller communities. So the city of Verona, okay, smaller than the city of Fitchburg, they have a larger police department, square footage wise. Middleton is a good example. They're, I think, around 45,000 square feet. Middleton's was constructed back in 2010. So yeah, that was absolutely a component of looking at that space needs study.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
No, finish.
My follow-up question is, I've never been in any building project where by the time the building is finished, that it's actually served the current, like basically the people who move in already exceed the capacity of the building. That's usually what happens. And you had mentioned that, you all won't move into 26. So in terms of the, this plan, does it take into account
Our future growth,
Yeah.
or our anticipated future growth, yes, we'll touch on that in just a moment. Yep. Go ahead.
Does this process include some part of reviewing the current police office space? For one thing, for a reference for what you have now and how much is allocated for the different functions. and then, you know, how those are moving into the new building, as well as, does this include reviewing this, you know, when the police move out of the current police space, is it gonna be just, you know, 4 empty walls and then somebody decides how city hall offices are gonna move into it, or does this look at all about what value this is gonna be to the other city offices?
So this project is looking at the needs of the police department and basically identifying that the city is going to have 17,783 square feet to deal with. That has not been, I'll defer to elected officials here, but that has not been fully developed as a plan for the next phase. But that next phase can't happen until we move out of there.
I can add that.
Yeah.
The next CIP, so this year we're gonna add, in the CIP, the phase 2 is gonna be the renovation of the city hall. It's gonna be another couple of millions, so we need to invest in this 3 years.
Is there at least a diagram in here anywhere of the current police office space? I've only been in as far as records, no other, you know,
No, I don't have a current diagram to show you. We're focusing on this space for right now.
Imagine the basement of where you went to grade school.
Well, I've been to records, I don't know what the rest of it looks like.
Yes.
How do you guys currently advertise about these meetings? Because I found out through word of mouth. I recently moved here in April, so.
Yeah, so Fitchburg's an interesting community as far as disseminating information and connected neighborhoods. So it's been on our Facebook, city's Facebook account and police department next door. We rely on our neighborhood associations. However, those are struggling as neighborhoods grow and change. But neighborhood associations and homeowners associations, we'd send out information. Our alders have pretty comprehensive distribution lists. And so it's hard as a new resident, I can imagine, to navigate all the different places to plug into. But we've been really doing our best with the tools that we have available. We also rely, again, on our friends on Fact TV to advertise there on streaming all over the place, putting that information out there. There has been some distribution, literally door to door, of the flyers that we have to get people out, get that word out as well. Trying to get the information out through the Fitchburg Star. Yeah, we've got some of that information out there there is it's a long story that we don't have time for as it relates to the Fitchburg Star, but it used to be a citywide distributed newspaper. Yeah, so. Other questions on the first couple of chunks? Oh, yep, sorry.
On City Hall, and you guys are going to leave City Hall, and we're going to put people down in the basement and down there and stuff. But did we ever figure out, before you guys decided that, you're leaving City Hall, remodeling and putting an addition on compared to a brand new building? I'm all in favor of this brand new building. I like it, but the price scares me. And what I've learned so far, it even scares me worse, the amount of money it's going to have to cost to maintain and run it. And I've checked into it because I've been at the last 2 meetings, so I check up and stuff. And I'm just wondering, sometimes, like people want a bigger house, they don't go out and buy a brand new house. They sit there and remodel and they put an addition on.
So what do we do with all the people in City Hall that need space to work? What do we do with them?
So city staff is growing.
Okay.
Is-
I've been up to City Hall 4 times, and you wouldn't want to know what I would like to say. Okay, we're growing, yes, but I'm gonna leave it with that. But the City Hall would look nice with a nice added wing, and stuff.
Yeah, so
Because that corner, I didn't know until just this last 2 meetings, that corner was designated for a park. And you guys have already figured it out how to take that out of it. But it's still going to cost a lot of money for construction.
Well,
Not even getting you guys into the building is going to cost us a lot. So, I'm just looking, not to be cheap, but, we have a big, beautiful city building. And it wouldn't ruin it to add it on.
So that was done, that examination, the difference between an add-on and a standalone facility was done as part of that space needs study several years ago. And the decision was made to pursue the standalone facility primarily for the reasons of where does City Hall expand to, the efficiencies of connecting the building, the heating, the HVAC systems, all those things were taken into account. It has been looked at. So moving into programming. So programming, when FGM comes to us in June and they're ready to start planning, they want to understand what is important to the Fitchburg Police Department, what's important to the community, what's necessary. And again, they're experts. They've done over 300 facilities, so they know, they've seen things in different communities. They've understood how things work, what works well, what doesn't work well. So they're kind of coaching us through some of these things, but they want to learn about what's important to us, how we do business. But to really root this whole project, we have to kind of think about the future of policing, the current expectations, community expectations, and where this profession is going. It's very hard to forecast how things are going to change in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in policing. There are some police departments where they have drones responding to all their calls, like their 60% of their calls for service is a drone is the first on scene, so they have a bay on top of their police department. You can't predict how policing changes, technology changes. But looking at some things to root ourselves in, accreditation is a goal of a lot of police departments. We are not an accredited facility or a police department. It is not necessarily a bad thing, but accreditation is a way for us to ensure, it's a mechanism to ensure that we maintain our best practices and standards. And being an accredited agency helps reduce our risk profile and could potentially have financial benefits in the sense of insurance reductions and things like that. It's a standard, the gold standard. Enhanced accessibility, community engagement, officer training, officer wellness, and technology. These are some core things that we find in two major guiding documents, one being President Obama's report on 21st century policing, and locally, the Dane County United Way Leaders of Color Collaboration produced a report on use of force. This was coming after some high-profile incidents. And officer training and officer wellness are huge in both those components. We can't expect our police officers, the young people, and when I say young people, I mean young people that we're putting out into our community, that you expect to come to your house to solve a problem in our community, to be their best, to do the best if they're not the best themselves. The things that people see, the trauma that they experience, we have to make sure that they're taken care of. So that's taken into account here. So building a police building, these are all the components. This isn't just an office space. This is a purpose-built facility. All these pieces are interconnected, and we have to account for future growth. Our the one most visible part of the police department is the patrol, is the uniforms, the cars, the officers that you see in cars driving around. We have investigations when things escalate. When we have a significant incident, we have investigations. Any company, any business, any organization, of course, we have administration. We also have training, wellness and fitness, a booking area, support services, records, evidence, and dispatch. We're one of few communities that has its own dispatch center. We feel that provides a higher level of service for our citizens and our officers. So to answer your question here, looking at planning for the future. So before we talk about the future, we're going to talk about the past. So going back to 2010, Fitchburg, 25,848 residents. I was in City Hall today and I looked at a sign celebrating Fitchburg's 40th anniversary last year. And when they first became a city, 40 years or in 1983, I think the sign read 17,000 residents. Okay, so there wasn't a whole lot of growth for a while. And then 2010, we have 25,000 residents, 44 officers, and again, 17,000 square feet. Last year, with the attachment of the town of Madison, moved to 34,000 residents, 55 sworn personnel, and again, 17,783 square feet. Using the projection of 750 residents per year, what we're growing at, by 2033, we're looking at over 40,000 residents. There is a standard comparison of law enforcement staffing, and this is a very general standard, but looking in the Midwest at about 1.9 officers per 1,000 residents. So if you project that out, you get 79 sworn personnel by 2033 to maintain that standard. Right now, we're one of the lowest of comparable cities. We're around 1.6. Moving forward to 2043, we're almost to 50,000 people, which would mean about 93 sworn personnel. So when we're talking about planning, we are comfortable. We're talking number of desks, workspaces, storage of vehicles, all those types of things. We're fairly comfortable with where we sit with that square footage. So what does this mean? What are the impacts of this? The impacts of growth. We all want to see things develop. We want to see restaurants and amenities, more homes being built. But this means more sworn personnel. It means more professional staff. It means more vehicles, more equipment, more calls for service. More people are going to call us more frequently. More involved investigations, more evidence, a greater need for specialized services, and an increased need for training. And in the area is not, we're not the only city that's growing, the entire area is growing. So that means more sworn personnel across the county. That means more calls for service. It means more involved investigations that impact Fitchburg. So if something major happens in Madison, or something happens in Fitchburg, it is often connected in something to Madison. And decreased availability of training facilities. We'll touch on that in just a second. So it's a purpose-built space. This is an office space. We can't just put up 4 walls and carpet and a cubicle and say, here's a police department. We're planning to have this cover our staffing and our size needs for at least 20 years. The building hopefully is going to last much longer than that. And there's been some suggestion that maybe we build half of a police department. You can't build half of a holding cell. You can't build half of a dispatch center. Half of an evidence room. You need some core functions in order to have a functioning police facility. And it's more cost efficient to build for the future now. It might seem like sticker shock to build something, but if you look at the Dane County Jail project and what that's been looking like in the news and how much that ends up costing people over time versus if it was built properly, it's cost savings. So no one likes to pay the big price up front, but we're saving money. So the schematic design, again, the blueprints over here we're looking at. This is some what we're talking about, our preferred schematic design. So 74,000 square feet spread across multiple levels. The ability to incorporate sustainability, which we'll touch on, and it features training components. We are confident that the best way to serve the city of Fitchburg is to incorporate these training components. So again, meets our current needs and provides future flexibility, and it is what is needed now. This isn't just building a facility for the future. This was needed yesterday, and it's needed today, and it'll be needed tomorrow. Any questions? We're going to jump into a tour of the building here, so any questions on what I just covered there? Yeah.
Accreditation, our police department is not accredited now. What does it mean to be accredited, and like briefly, what does it take to get that?
So it takes basically a full-time position for at least a couple years to go through all that work. We don't have a lot of people, extra people, to go through all our policies and procedures primarily and make sure that they are meeting gold standards of everything. And there are several different bodies of accreditation, so that can be state, national, a couple different levels, right? And so it's just like best practices in any industry. And you have to prove that you're doing these things, and you have to regularly update these policies, maintain them, train on them, and provide proof of that. So we have taken steps to move towards that as far as updating our policy manual and making sure it's contemporary and working with a service that provides legal updates to our policies. But it's a large and lengthy process to be a part of.
So does that have anything to do, actually, accreditation with this new building?
It does, and we'll talk about that here in a second.
Okay.
Right now, our current facility would not meet accreditation standards.
Also, you mentioned loss as part of accreditation, and back at the beginning, there was a line there about risk/loss. What does that mean?
We'll talk about that as we go along.
All right.
Yep.
Does accreditation open up federal funding? I mean, is there monies that are available only to accredited facilities?
Not that I'm aware of. I think it helps if you were to make the case in some instances. I could imagine it might be helpful, but it doesn't necessarily open any doors that aren't already there. Yes?
Question about the community part and the training facility. Oh, by the way, I'm asking a lot of questions because we literally will be neighbor, and I will see you a lot. Hope not, but so I'm thinking in terms of training facility, you know, and I don't know anything about police business. So let's say if we're thinking about the public school model, where our kids, right? My kids went to Madison, and other people's kids went to Verona. And so is there any chance of sort of collaboration in terms of training facility with neighboring cities so that we can do saving?
We're going to touch on that. It's a great question, and we'll put a pin in that, and we'll get to that when we talk about training. Is there a question over here?
Budget's coming, right?
Yes. Yep. We'll save that for last. Yep. All right. Let's see what it looks like. So the site, as was mentioned back here, the site was parkland, is part of the greater area there coming from Promega. We went through a process to have that changed to allow us to use this area because there had not been any development on it. But this is Lacey Road here and Fish Hatchery Road to the west of the facility. There are some unique features of topography and the creek that goes back through there, so we have to be respectful of those boundaries and limitations. Research Park Drive here is where the main entrance to the facility is, and it kind of orients you as in the shape of an L back here. One feature is unique, or would be unique to us, especially right now in our current setup, is that we would have our own parking lot. Right now we share the parking lot with City Hall, and that's open to the public. We have had instances where individuals that, for lack of a better term, are a bit of agitators, have come onto our property to record us and record our activities. And there are some pretty significant incidents of individuals who are armed that had ill intent that were coming out to do this, to agitate us, and those have happened in this area. We've also had some threats. If officers, needless to say, having a secure parking lot is a needed portion of this process here for this facility. So there is a security fence that goes around there. It is not barbed wire. There was some information out there that this was going to be barbed wire and it was going to look like a prison. It will be a contemporary looking fence that will fit in with the rest of the building. But there will be access, limited access, not for the public, onto Lacey Road, but the primary access point will be off of Research Park. So there's a rendering of the exterior. I will highlight right now that this, we want to make this look welcoming, open glass, let light in for employees, but also make it feel open and welcoming for people that are coming into the facility. Whilst also having a prominent entrance, so you know that that's the police department and that's where you enter. A view from Lacey and Research Park here. And then this is an area that's generated some concern as individuals are driving down Fish Hatchery Road, looking at what some people call the back of the building, seeing the parking lot area there. We're trying to address that as best as possible through the exterior design of the building, but also would note that because of some of the topography issues and foliage, this wouldn't be your primary view. You're going to be seeing kind of the higher upper levels of the building here. So unless anyone has excellent vision, I'm not going to get into these maps too much here. We're going to walk through them in a second. But again, this L shape here, the lower level primarily features underground, what we're calling underground parking. It's not really underground, but it's under the facility parking. So climate controlled, allows our vehicles to be parked down there safe, and I don't want to get too far into it, but basically right now we have the ability to plug our cars in, not as an electric vehicle, but to keep them from having to idle all the time. Right next to the underground parking area there is our multi-purpose training bay, which we'll talk about. And then this area over here is our evidence area. Moving up to the second floor, we have a mix of services to include community rooms, our lobby, patrol, booking, and dispatch and records. We'll get into more detail in a second. And then the upper floor here has investigations, our executive staff area, and some conference and meeting rooms we'll talk about. So again, coming into the main entrance here, these are all example photos from our architect. A prominent entrance, people know where to go. Some views of what the lobby area might look like, and a feature that we're going to incorporate here is an after-hours service window. So if an individual comes in after personnel are at the front window, they would be able to meet that person in the vestibule without having to let them into the rest of the building. This large public lobby here is really not a whole lot more square footage than our current hallway. If anyone's been into our facility, the long hallway that goes down there, but it's clearly much more open. And with our community meeting rooms over here, it gives those meeting rooms a place to have a break. If someone's coming to meet with personnel from the police department, it has a nice lobby area where they can wait. Public restrooms down here, and then we'll get into a couple more spaces right off the lobby. So this community multi-purpose room is part of our training components that we talked about. It is a space that could be reserved by community members or organizations for meetings. There is a small kitchenette down here, so you could have a little bit more of a dinner or lunch meeting. And this is can seat 100 person or 100 people classroom style with a divider down here to divide that space up into 50 person capacity. Behind that space and right off the lobby is a unique feature here. As I mentioned, we have a half-time social worker right now. We would like to have that social worker be full-time, but this is space right off of the lobby, so someone that's coming to meet with that person, that social worker, doesn't have to come all the way into our facility. They can meet them right off of the lobby. They have an office and a meeting area right there. This green roof and patio, it sits right above our training bay we'll talk about here, but it could be an additional amenity for someone reserving those community rooms. They could have a breakout session or break outside on the front of the building here. When we have people that come into the police department for an interview, if they're a suspect or a victim, we have dedicated space here. This is a soft interview room, so if you are unfortunately a victim of a crime and you need to come in and speak to an officer, we want to have a softer and more welcoming area where people feel safe. It's tucked away, so it's private, and we want to be able to meet with that person or a family in some instances in a nicer environment. Next to that is a hard interview room, which is not really hard. It's just a little bit more secure and would be used for an interview with a suspect. Our records department, so we still keep paper records of some documents. Most of it is digital, but our records specialists do an amazing job providing copies of reports and other information to the public. And so this is going to be a primary interaction point when individuals come into the police department. Dispatch, again, I mentioned we are one of the few communities that has its own dispatch center. And so anticipating future growth, dispatch really has to be a self-sustaining area. So there's space for a break room and also a wellness room. We're going to talk about wellness rooms here in depth a little bit more. IT infrastructure, we have a lot of IT infrastructure that needs to go in here, so we need to keep that safe and secure. Oops. And then moving into the patrol area. So most of our patrol officers, their office is out on the road. But in order to prepare for their shift, beginning of their shift and end their shift, they still need some space. And then more importantly, our supervisors that coach and mentor our personnel that are out on the street need plenty of space to plan for management of their daily activities and their personnel. So this space is primarily for anyone that wears a uniform and has some meeting space as well. Break room, key feature here of this area is something that we don't have right now. Right now our break room essentially consists of a converted hallway coat closet and a table and a microwave and a refrigerator. This space will give officers time when they're on their break to sit down, enjoy a meal, And keep in mind, our officers are never really on break. Their radio may go off and they may have to leave at a moment's notice. So we want that break space to be conveniently located, and we want it to be big enough that we can have a retirement celebration, we could have some team building activities and some camaraderie. Wellness rooms. So there are 3 wellness rooms in this facility, and wellness rooms are really multi-purpose, but they are designed for someone to be able to be alone for whatever reason that might be. It might be for lactation. You might be staying over, working an overnight shift, and you have a court appearance later in the morning. So instead of driving 45 minutes back home, you're going to catch a quick nap off duty. You can go into these rooms. Our architect actually works with individuals that are familiar with brain science to adjust lighting, sound, all sorts of things to make these rooms really focus on keeping our officers well when they need to take a break, they need time away from things. I don't fortunately anymore, wear a bunch of stuff that requires charging, body cameras, tasers, all sorts of things, but we have a ton of equipment that needs to be stored when officers go out in their mobile office, so there's space for that. There are some additional interview rooms in our holding area, which we'll talk about, but just examples of what those look like. Our Sally Port, this is a fan favorite. People didn't believe me, but people always see the word Sally Port and ask what that means. Was a woman named Sally that had designed these. It's essentially a fancy garage. The term comes from medieval times, that it was a way to keep the castle safe without opening the castle doors. But this is an area when we talk about risk mitigation and loss, and this is accreditation. Right now, we don't have a functional Sally Port. So when we have someone in the back of our car that's in custody, in our care, in handcuffs, and we're bringing them back to the police department, it could be a drunk driver, it could be someone under arrest for a criminal charge. The idea is that the officer drives into that garage door, parks their car, closes that garage door behind them, and before you even begin to get that person out of that car, now you have them in a controlled environment. They're inside the police department. Right now, we have to park our car outside and bring that person in. So ICE, we're bringing someone in handcuffs, that person slips and falls. You know, we try our best to hold on to them, that person slips and falls. That's not good. Not going to look good, right? Person right now gets out of their car in handcuffs, they run. Now that person's run away. So this is a risk mitigation. This is protecting us. This moves to accreditation. We can't meet that right now. Once that person's inside, now there's a processing area. Frequently, this would be used for OWI, drunk driving enforcement processing. Another thing that I've talked about the last couple of meetings is as things have changed in policing, we may see this in the future where instead of actually taking someone to jail and lodging them there, we might be processing them at our facility and then giving them basically a ticket to appear at a later date. There are a lot of communities that, due to overcrowding issues, and this happened during the pandemic as well, they're not taking people at the county jail anymore. I don't know that we're there yet, but it might be down the road. So we need a space to process individuals. Set it down for a second to go and fill your water bottle or do whatever, that's not good. So you want to be able to take that evidence right into the evidence. Put it through these lockers. And a civilian position that would manage our evidence that then comes through on the other side of those lockers, takes that property, and then puts it into some larger storage, which we'll see in a second. The one unique challenge that we're up against with fentanyl crisis, opioid crisis, is we collect a lot of powders, suspected drugs, we have to test those. In order to do that safely, that requires hoods that cost thousands upon thousands of dollars. So we need a space for that. So the property area is where we store our evidence, and a lot of our evidence we have to store for a very long time. So if someone's arrested for a crime, we have to keep that through their appeals process. Okay, so that's a long period of time. Some pieces of evidence we basically have to keep indefinitely. So a large evidence storage area. And then one of the features that we've done, our original space needs study basically extrapolated that we would need quite a bit of evidence storage space. What has advanced in this world is this space saver storage system, which allows much like a paper records in a doctor's office, to be compressed and organized in a system like this. A couple training components. Defensive and arrest tactics is the acronym. Police love acronyms. So that's DAT, DAT training area. It is essentially pads, mats, wrestling mats on walls and the floor, so that officers can train safely, train on tactics and techniques related to defensive tactics and arresting individuals properly and safely. Again, to minimize injury and risk so that we're doing things properly. Locker rooms, so this takes into account future growth as far as men's and women's lockers. The locker rooms empty out into the fitness area, which you'll see here. And then we also have a universal shower and lockers and a universal toilet as well. Some photos of command staff conference rooms examples. Office cubicles, some examples there. This is a space that's generated some questions. So upstairs where we have investigations, so that's going to be on the second floor where our detectives work out of. Having a space, a separate conference room for those major investigations. We had a homicide in 2019, and we have very limited space right now, as we've talked about in our facility. We had outside agency detectives come in and help us on that homicide. They were with us for several weeks, and we occupied that room that we use for training and for briefing. We occupied that room with documents hanging on the walls for weeks, for months during this homicide investigation. So we need a space to manage that. There's a divider wall in here, and there's also space for, say, a detective from the sheriff's office if they're going to be with us for a period of time to work out of that area. Armory and storage, this allows us to safely store our weapons, both lethal weapons and non-lethal weapons, along with our ammunition.
What floor is that on?
That is on the basement level next to the range there, the training area. Gun cleaning, and that kind of wraps up the tour of the facility. So I ran through a lot there. Questions, I can go back and show you anything here.
The main entrance faces to the east towards the library and City Hall.
Yep.
So then from coming in that main entrance is, what floor was the 100-person community?
The main level there.
The main
right
level,
yep.
okay. So there's a direct connection into that.
Yep.
And then in front of the building, is there some public parking that would be related to that?
Correct. There'll be public parking. You'll see the street parking right there, and then overflow parking across the street still at City Hall.
And then there's an evidence building over south of Public Works.
Correct.
Over by the recycling. Does that stay there?
That stays there.
So that plus different kind of evidence goes in there.
Exactly. Different kind of evidence. So that evidence storage facility that's down by our Public Works garage, that stores primarily vehicles, bicycles, and then other large pieces of evidence that are kept in long-term storage.
Is there any thoughts on a service bay for oil changes, tire rotations in our garage?
So this does have the ability in the evidence area to have a vehicle that can be brought in there with a winch, but it does not have a service bay for police vehicles. Other questions on the layout of the building here? Yes, from Zoom.
I'm monitoring some of our people on the Zoom here. So we have a question from Derek. Pardon me. Derek asks, for comparison purposes, what other cities, towns in Dane County of similar population size as Fitchburg have a facility as the one being proposed?
So I think I mentioned Milton would more closely be compared to us. In 2010, they constructed a facility that was around 44,000 square feet of usable space. So again, 2010, we're 14 years past that. So I think if you were to ask Middleton how much square footage they need now, they'd probably tell you probably more than what they built back then. Sun Prairie is a comparable to a degree. However, they have their space split between two facilities. Rather than adding in, they were in a similar position. They added a west, I believe west precinct is what they refer to it as, so a separate building. So similar square footage there. It's hard to compare because communities build police departments at different times in their development, and so we're trying to accommodate for the future. As I mentioned, Verona, a smaller city, has more square footage than we do right now. And that facility was built, I want to say, in 2010, 2009, back then. So they were planning for the future back then. They're filling in that space, and it's the same idea here.
One more question from Sherry. It was first requested that 78,000 square feet was needed, and it has now been reduced to 74,000. What was deleted or reduced from the square footage?
So a good chunk of that came, I touched on it just a little bit, in reducing some of that evidence storage area, and then also some of the parking area was reduced as well. So we eliminated, I believe, 6 parking stalls, is that correct? From the parking there to kind of bring that northern tip of the building down a little bit. Yes?
How committed are we to the physical site where this is proposed?
Committed.
Because Promega controls that land because they donated it to the city with a lot of strings. Could we not build that building cheaper on land that's not controlled by someone else? And could we not build it at where the fire station, the old fire station on Lacey Road is, where we already own the land? And we would not have the architectural commitments that we would have to make. Can you give me some idea of what it's costing us to build there and match the Promega architectural commitments that we have to restrain under if we build at that site? And could we save some money by having our building department general this project? We have them in charge in reviewing all of the other buildings that are built in this city. Why can't we have them be our own general and have them be in charge of it? The amount of money we'd save under something like that would be considerable. Because I'm a builder, I understand that. Now, I will get plenty of pushback from the building department, but that doesn't mean that isn't a smart way to go.
Several questions there. So the site, as you touched on, is connected to Promega. It was parkland, became now available for us to use. We have been, as I mentioned, meeting with a Fitchburg Center group to review plans, and they've been very workable and agreeable, providing some good suggestions, and that work has continued. So that has not been a hurdle or an obstacle for us to deal with. The site does have challenges as it relates to, there's no money involved to answer that question there related to that. The site does have some challenges that you might not find in other sites, but the fact is we're not paying for real estate someplace else to combine what we talk about today as far as acreage. 7 to 8 acres. So to find 7 to 8 acres that could accommodate that someplace else in a similarly situated location would be a challenge with the way real estate is these days.
What about the former fire station on Lacey?
That would not be a large enough site.
And the fire station is still currently being used. It is also serves as the county's backup EOC. So that is
A functional
a
space.
functional space and a needed space in not only in our community but also in the county.
And then as far as the concept of our Public Works Department managing it, we do have Paul Woodard, former Public Works Director, is assisting with the project. But they're at capacity as far as, we're at fully staffed in that Public Works Department, but I don't think that they, number one, have the capacity to do that, and number two, we're working with a firm that's, familiar with this industry and specifically building these larger buildings like that. I don't recall off the top of my head the Sorry, I'm thinking people I'll start over
Just
here.
out of curiosity, in terms of, because you had talked about cutting some of the spaces, like on surface, right? Can you go up higher in the future?
As far as expansion,
Okay.
yeah, so I believe that there is some consideration given to that. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be constructed with that intent. That there's a discussion, and the architect that presented at the first public meeting mentioned that in his experience, and again, they've done 300 of these facilities and also done additions, is that by the time you want to go up, to build up, that rest of the facility, the old part of that facility, is probably outdated and probably needs to be redone. So the concept would be to build, at that point, we would probably be ready as a city to build a satellite facility someplace else rather than trying to build up, if that makes sense.
I'm excited about this. I really like it. I like the commitment to police training. I like the commitment to police wellness, and especially the sustainability. So do you know some of the things that would go into this building for sustainability? Will they have electric charging stations and things like that?
You're ahead. It's like my presentation ahead of time here. We'll cover that in a second here. So other.
Additional comments, like Mark, when we do big project like this, we try to hire like a general contractor to take over oversee the project. Like we did that with Fish Hatchery Road too, because of the capacity that we have, the lack of capacity that we have inside City Hall. Yeah.
I understand. I'm just looking at trying to cut costs.
Yeah, no.
There's also advantages to being proximate to City Hall in terms of meetings and so on, that space being available.
So we're going to talk now specifically about training and training components of the building. So how often do you turn on the nightly news and see this headline?
Today.
You did?
There was a school shooting in Iowa, unfortunately, and they really gracefully handled that situation.
Okay, so perfect. Speaking of school shootings, does anyone remember seeing these images?
My kids did a video, so thank you for keeping us safe.
So this picture resonates with me, and I think it resonates with all law enforcement officers who want to do their best. And I'm not saying that the law enforcement officers that responded to this didn't want to do their best, but I can tell you that this was a failure of training. And when we talk about risk and loss and those types of things, and things that cost money in the long term, this incident in Uvalde, Texas, was a failure of training, is a failure of leadership and decisive action. Now, I'm going to tell you that this facility, this training bay that some people have thought of as a range, would allow officers, the day after this comes out, to recreate this scenario in a live fire situation. We could literally, in this space that we have, this training bay, you could create a space. This is a picture of a not necessarily similar size, but similar concept. So instead of designated lanes where you're limited, you can move anywhere about in this concrete area here to fire your weapon. But more importantly, you can also be in that area with a live weapon and be a part of training there where you never actually fire your weapon, if that makes sense. So in this situation, you could recreate that scenario where you have a set of doors that you have to go through, or you're standing in front of, and you hear gunshots on the other side of those doors. And then now you have to use your real tools. You have to breach that door. You have to breach this door. And you've heard gunshots, so now your stress is up, your adrenaline's up, you have your real gun, you know that you're in a safe environment where you could, if there's a target on the other side that's pointing a gun at you, you could fire your actual weapon, feel what that actually feels like in a stressful environment. Now, we can create a scenario where that door opens, you get through that door, and instead of a target with a person, a bad guy pointing a gun at you, it's a small child standing there. And now you're thinking I'm automatically going to shoot. As soon as I go through that door, I know there's a shooter on the other side. Now you are training that person, training that officer, that there are going to be scenarios where often, and that's how often happens in our city, We unholster our gun and point it a lot of times. We don't shoot our gun very often, if at all, in our community. And so we have to train our officers that just because you have a tool doesn't mean you have to use it. But you also have to train in a realistic environment. So this training bay allows us, instead of just practicing with a plastic gun and fake equipment, this allows us to be in a game situation without actually having competition, if that makes sense. As close as possible as you can be. Your heart rate is up. You're using your real tools. You're feeling what it's like to shoot your actual weapon. And we're going to talk about why that's important here in just a second. So again, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about that training bay that's adjacent to the parking area. Having the space here where you can bring it, you could literally drive a car in here and practice what it's like to get out of your car or shoot from your car. So training components, just as a recap, we have this training bay, we have the community rooms upstairs, so classroom style training. So a lot of police training is theory based. It's learning best practices, it's learning from domestic violence advocates, it's learning from mental health instructors, going through a lot of things to improve and further professionalize training. A lot of it's done in the classroom. Sometimes that's tied in with tactical training, sometimes it might just be classroom training. Defensive tactics room, that's the room with the pads, the wrestling room, if you will, where you can then go and practice those hands-on tactics and techniques, those things that don't involve lethal force, and if they're done properly, they can prevent the use of lethal force, they can prevent an officer feeling like they're in a position where they have no other choice but to use lethal force, so that's an important part of this space. And then the multi-purpose tactical training bay. So it allows for firearms training, it allows for firearms qualification, which is required by the state, and it can incorporate a lot of different elements like we talked about. Training challenges, there are only 2 locations in Dane County that we can realistically train at. One being Madison Police Department, they're the only indoor facility. So 2/3 of our police department that's on patrol, they work in some hours of darkness. I can't go out to the Dane County range and train officers in night tactics or training or shooting. Madison PD, you can turn the lights out, and officers have to learn to use their flashlight. So Madison's the only place that we can do that. Dane County, they only have outdoor ranges. The next closest option, if those 2 are full, going to Toma, Fort McCoy. Do you think it's free? Do you think officers volunteer to drive to go to Toma, or do you think we have to pay them? It's an inefficient use of time, right? It's not helpful for our community. It's not helpful for the officers. And on top of it, we have 55 sworn. That number is only going to continue to grow. We have 4 in-service days a year that are required. That is the bare minimum training for us. That's 32 hours. So our instructors, we have perfectly qualified. We have 2 of them in the room tonight, are perfectly qualified instructors by the state. They're experts. They know the updates. They get trained in everything that's contemporary for their field. They have to coordinate 20 days of training because we have to, each one of those in-service quarters, we have to get 5 groups of officers in there. Because, of course, we can't send the entire department. There's not space. And number 2, someone still has to be here working, right? So that means that we have to squeeze 20 days of training for the entire department into these 2 locations. Madison PD and Dane County Sheriff's Office are under 0 obligation to let us train there. They have to train their people first. And if other agencies, including state, federal, and local agencies, get their schedule on there first, we're out of luck. And as I mentioned, it's a really inefficient use of travel time and downtime, and that costs money. That's money that could be spent for an officer on patrol. Now, why is this so important? Why are we talking about training so much? Average officer goes to the Law Enforcement Academy, State Law Enforcement Academy, 720 hours of training. 720 hours of training. You have a badge and a gun. You can take someone's life and liberty away from them. You get 720 hours of training. There are professions, and I'm not going to throw shade at other professions, there are professions out there that require significantly more training to be licensed in the state, and they have no ability to take someone's life or to deprive them of their liberty. So of those 720 hours, less than 20% of that is spent on firearms and defensive tactics. So the things that have the highest liability, the highest risk, both to that officer and to the public, they spend less than 20% of that 720 hours on that training. As I mentioned, once they come to the police department, they're going to receive 32 hours of training. It's not really 32 hours of training. Those 32 hours of training include travel time. They include staying around waiting for the next officer in line to go up and be able to shoot or to go and engage in some sort of training scenario. They're not training, you're not really training for 32 hours. State minimum is 24 hours. And the firearm is only a portion of those 32 hours. 3 of those times is potentially training with the firearm, and the one time a year is qualification, again, state mandated qualification. This is why we're really concerned about training. You've seen hiring issues, staffing issues across the country in law enforcement for a variety of reasons. The average officer in our department has approximately 4 years of experience. If you go back to your house right now and you call the Fitchburg Police Department, an officer with less than 3 years of experience is going to be the average level of experience that shows up to your house. I don't mean to alarm anybody, and I'm very proud. We're all very proud of the officers that we have. I think we go above and beyond in both recruiting and hiring and training with the resources that we have, but we can always do better. We can do better for us and for the community. Before we move on to the next part, I'm just going to ask everybody a question here. You have a loved one in your family, and they have some mental health challenges. It's not unique. We spend a lot of time with individuals with mental health challenges in our community. They, for whatever reason, decide to go armed one day. They're having an acute mental health crisis. They're armed. They've now created an issue that a neighbor becomes aware of, and that neighbor, who may not know your loved one and what they're struggling with, sees this and calls the police. If you got to choose who responded to that call for service, do you want the brand new officer that has the bare minimum training, that barely exceeds that training? Or do you want the officer that has the opportunity on a daily basis, when they come into work, they don't have to travel anywhere to train, they don't have to wait for the next quarter of in-service to train, they can train on a daily basis. Who do you want responding? Number 2? All right. When you get on an airplane, and if you knew that airplane was going to have both of its engines fail because it strikes birds shortly after takeoff, do you want the guy that just graduated from the flight school, or do you want Sully Sullenberger, who has thousands of hours of flight training? When you have a severe medical issue and you live in rural Wisconsin, do you just have medical treatment done at your local hospital, the emergency room, or do you travel for hours and miles to find the best and the brightest that can take care of your medical issue? This is an investment in our community. It's an investment in our people, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. So this is why training components to us are not negotiable in this facility. Yeah.
To follow your questions and your train of thoughts, if we invest in this and we have better training, so what would be the measurable, so that you know that it actually resulted in better outcome of better trained officer? Like, would that be a built-in plan of measurable? In 5 years we would see da 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 da, and it will be observable because of da 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 da.
It would be great if you could, very easily. But again, how many times do you see the crime that didn't happen? Do you see the complaint that didn't happen? Do you see the injury that didn't happen? We, fortunately, don't have a lot of all those things in the first place. We don't have a lot of use of force incidents. People are shocked when we tell them how many times we actually use physical force as a police department, because we have excellent trainers. We have a department philosophy that uses communication and de-escalation. But I can tell you, as we add more personnel and as we have younger and younger people, that we may experience more use of force issues. We may experience those things. So to answer your question, I don't know that we have any very direct measurables, but I can tell you that adding training hours to somebody is not going to make them a less proficient officer. It's not going to decrease the level of service.
I guess that wasn't my point. My point is there must be current data now, and then sort of data to benchmark what would the investment, return be in terms as fast as you were the head of the department and you would want to know? Is this result?
From a purely financial standpoint, that makes sense, right? How many people in here know if you're ever going to call the Fitchburg Police Department? No, I mean, know that you're going to need to call us at some point. You know with certainty. Okay, but do you know when that's going to happen and under what circumstances? Okay, so do you want to roll the dice that that officer that shows up that day may only have the bare minimum?
I think, to answer that, I'm wondering if there would be like kind of an annual report, this is the amount of people that we have here, this is what we would expect in terms of crime based on these other analyses, et cetera, this is what we're doing, I think, I'm wondering.
So I guess one of the measurables from a data standpoint that you could potentially identify is we already have an extremely low number of uses of force compared to actually calls for service. It's in the ballpark of 0.001% of all of our calls for service. We actually physically go hands-on with somebody during the course of events. So one of the measurables could be that decreases even more regardless of the population going up, or they don't increase, or officer injuries or individual injuries go down because, as Lieutenant Hartwick alluded to, that incident is not going to be the first time that officer experienced that. So a lot of times an inexperienced officer or an underperforming officer, undertrained officer will go into a situation and try to be that hero, but through training would recognize that this is not a situation that I can control because they've experienced that already. Create time, distance, wait for more people, team tactics, reduce the risk to officers, reduce the risk to the person that could potentially be that individual that we would have to use force on.
And just like as an additional caveat, I think a very measurable benchmark would be retention of officers, right? So your officer showing up, if he has this facility or she, and they are able to be proud of where they go to work every day, and they have the resources available to them and the facility to train in, well, pretty soon that second shift officer showing up to respond to your house is going to be 15 years. We don't retain officers here. We're a great place for people to start, and we're a stepping stone, but the grass is greener in our neighboring communities. And so I think that's something that would be very measurable that we could look at going forward with this addition.
One of the greatest retention tools in law enforcement or any industry is the support you receive from your customers. In other words, the citizens that are our customers, the alders, the mayor, those are the customers that we serve. And that public support is sometimes way more powerful than salary and benefits. So this is another tool, not the key piece, but it's another tool that can increase that measurable of officer retention.
All right, now on to your request here, the financial impact. All right, so instead of dramatically scrolling through here, I just dropped the number right out there, $49.2 million. So if you remember, $35 million was what was budgeted. We're going to talk about that though in a second. So this $49.2 million number includes $2.5 million for sustainability. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, get into more detail there. It includes $2.8 million for interior furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. Police equipment and furnishings is not cheap. And it also includes $5.7 million for contingency and escalation. Sustainability. The building will have a lot of base sustainability features, things that just become accepted practices right now in designing buildings. And it is going to have some other benefits. We mentioned not having to have idling vehicles, being able to plug them in and keep them powered up in the basement. So that's going to have some impacts sustainability-wise. So there's $2.5 million there, and right now we are working on pricing for all of those things for the square footage to really come up with a menu of sorts for decision makers as it relates to these options, to include things like solar, geothermal, charging stations, all of the things, window glazing, energy efficiencies, all these types of things, to really make those key decisions within that $2.5 million price range. I think last night we talked about the fact that with rebates and incentives and programs that are out there, that we may be able to get much more for the same price, if that makes sense. The one thing to point out, compared to a lot of other facilities when we talk about sustainability and energy efficiencies, this is a 24-hour building. We can't drop the temperature down to barely above, tolerable in the middle of the night, because there's still going to be people working there around the clock. So there are some certain things that don't necessarily come off the table. They just don't have the same impact that they would in other facilities, if that is helpful. So there is work. When is the meeting? Yeah. RCC, the Resource Conservation Committee meeting to look the experts that have the knowledge as it relates to it. I think we're looking at this from we're the experts related to what is needed for a police facility. Again, we work in the police facility, so we feel like we're the experts there. We're going to defer some of that. We're not the ones picking, if we're going to put solar panels here or there or geothermal, but obviously we're going to advocate for what's going to keep our people safe and keep our facility powered up, to include emergency backup power and things like that, so that we can continue to deliver service. So this is a test of your eyesight, but it is a comparison between 2015 study, the space needs study component here, and 2023 numbers, looking at dollar amounts. So again, if you remember, we looked at $25 million initially. This study is showing 23.7, and in today's dollars, in 2024 dollars, that's $37 million. Also of note in here is that this did not include furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. And it was also not priced at square footage for a police facility. It was basically general pricing for essentially commercial office space. So there's a significant difference there.
It also didn't include sustainability.
And did not have the sustainability component. So if you start tacking those things on to that 37 million, it gets a lot closer to that 49. And then if you think about, what did we talk about today? Another project in the area.
Pre-2020 quotes on a facility that was built in McFarland. Our per square foot is roughly $660 for construction. Theirs was $450 per square foot for construction. That was pre-2020 craziness.
So roughly a 45% increase in just 4 years. Now again, I don't mean to really rub this in entirely, but this is a project that was first included in the CIP in 2016, or first fully included in 2017. It was mentioned in 2016. So we talk about how things continue to increase down the road, and we talk about price tags and being efficient with taxpayer dollars, because this is taxpayer dollars. That big price tag can be that sticker shock, but what's more cost efficient over time? Building something appropriately, to your point, and fitting what you need now and in the future, or building what's cheapest and what's going to save the money right now. I'd leave that for anyone to answer, much like you did about the training question. So at the December 12th Common Council meeting, our architect presented some options here. $49.2 million being what we've described as the design, the $2.5 million for sustainability. Dropping down into $45 million, looking at some cost cutting there. So this would mean building the tactical training bay, but without having the live fire capabilities. So that would not include ballistic panels to protect the walls from from bullets, and would not include the HVAC system necessary. So when you're shooting a gun, it's going to generate some air pollutants. It eliminates exterior amenities. So the one thing I didn't cover in the site plan is that there is a walking path and a small pavilion for individuals, a picnic area, so individuals can go out there and enjoy that. So it eliminates that, and it then further limits the sustainability features. Going down to $40 million, frankly, I don't even really want to talk about because I don't even think that it's a realistic option. I think now we're getting into the point of spinning our wheels and being in a situation that we're in right now, where the facility was built in 1999 and less than 15 years later, or about 15 years later, we're already starting to experience pains and planning for future growth. I don't think that it's viable to talk about something, $40 million or below. I think there's a recognition that we need to do this right, and we're trying our best. People have asked what we've cut. I don't look at this plan, and yes, there might be some unused office space, but we're building for at least the next 20 years that we need that office space now rather than adding on in the future. There's not square footage to cut. We have what we have, and we need to figure out ways to be smart about it, to address sustainability smartly and efficiently, and build a facility that's going to be cost efficient over time. So this is an investment, as we mentioned. Right now, there is $35 million in that CIP budget to build a police facility. Okay, so that means right now, per month, assuming a 20-year term on borrowing, average home assessed value of $381,000. That's an increase of $16.28 a month for $35 million. And again, I've just said I don't think that we can really build that facility with any purpose or use at that rate. We're going to just be spending more money in the near future. We're talking about a $6.98 difference to move all the way up to $23.26 a month to move us into that $50 million price range. That includes the sustainability components, the training components, the exterior amenities, and greater savings over time.
And that estimate is based on today's population. As population grows, price goes down per person.
So the deputy chief here is going to talk about a few of these other considerations. To include that right now, we actually had a meeting today, one of our regular meetings, to further refine and come up with other alternatives or options that we can make some refinements to that number. But they're not significant changes without having an impact on our overall plan.
Correct. So we are continuously working the design team to include members of the police department, members of the city, as well as FGM and Pepper Construction, to really drill down to see where is some things that we can remove and not affect the integrity of the entire design and what we're trying to go for. So we discussed today, we worked with Pepper Construction to rework some numbers, exactly what that cost is going to be. They're going to come back, and hopefully on Tuesday we'll have, for the Common Council, we'll have a better idea of exactly where that number is fluctuating. Some other things that can help with the financial impact, more from an operational side, because there is an estimate that it's going to cost roughly $550,000 per year for operational costs. That means keeps the lights on, adding custodian staff as well to maintain the cleanliness of the building, because if you know cops, we're not always the most clean. And again, it's a 24/7 building, so it's being used constantly. So the revenue comes from the surrounding agencies that could use the facility as well. Right now, our agency, we spend roughly $12,000 to $13,000 every year to rent the space at Madison or Dane County. I just had some email correspondence with a representative from Madison, and their revenue generated, and there's a reason this applies, is actually decreasing because they have to use their space more frequently. So eliminating the ability for surrounding agencies to be able to use their facility. So as population increases, as the number of officers increase in and around this area, premium, ultra premium space for training facilities where other agencies, local, county, state, federal, private organizations, hunter safety class DNR could potentially come in to use that space and provide revenue to rent that space. Not only the revenue from an operational side generated by renting the space, but the cost savings from the police department. Right now, I believe over the course of 2023, we paid roughly $52,000 in overtime costs for officers to train on in-service days. And in return, we needed to backfill all of those shifts that we had to pull officers from the road. If we have a training space, we'd be able to modify when and how officers are training, how frequently they're training, eliminating the need to pull them off, pull them completely off the road. You can do on-duty shoots or training or those types of things. So it will in turn save the department costs on overtime and generating some level of revenue. The revenue that we would generate would not pay for the operational costs. Madison provided a number of roughly $40,000 to $50,000 every year, but as population increases, as the number of officers increases, the number of agencies that could potentially use this facility would increase, so too would hopefully that revenue. In addition to some other financial considerations that we're trying to do, right now the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration has a non-state construction grant opportunity, which the City of Fitchburg and the Fitchburg Police Department are going to be applying for. This has the potential to provide the city with anywhere between $4 to $10 million. We are going to specifically ask for what the cost is for all the training elements in the building. And the reason why is the purpose of the construction grant is to promote a regional or statewide impact from a public safety standpoint. The only way, in my opinion, and after consulting and reading the grant requirements, the only way that this facility would have a regional impact would be to include those training elements to allow other departments to come in, to utilize it, to collaborate, to bring in nationally renowned training experts, to build up that training component, to take a step forward in the service that all collectively, all law enforcement agencies provide to our communities. So the only little hiccup right now is the fact that the deadline to apply is January 31st. One of the requirements is prove local government support. My hope was that schematic design was going to be approved. It's going to be delayed until after the January 31st deadline. Why? That was a decision. That was not my call. If the mayor would like to speak on that, she's more than welcome. However, I think the plan that we have in place to hopefully combat that, to have letters from our local alders that do support it be provided as letters of support for that, as well as letters of support from the U.S. Attorney's Office, from the Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, state senators, community organizations, as well as a collective letter from the Dane County Chiefs of Police Association to sign on to show their support that they intend to use our facility if we are provided that way.
But I'm really curious why we're pausing the January 31st, because I was not aware of that, and we've been putting you guys on hold literally since 2016. So if someone
I made a call, okay? I made a call because there are a lot of questions that the council has required and have requested, and they have not been answered yet. To be honest, the vote for yes, they are not yet there yet. So if we put it on vote on January 9. Exactly. So if we put this on January 9, the votes are not there. So we, and also council has requested more outreach, and this is what they are doing, this outreach. They are requesting more outreach maybe at the end of January too, because they consider some of this meeting, people are still on vacation this week and they don't have we don't have too much participation on those meetings, so they would like to have other meeting in another part of the city. And then, so we are waiting for the engineers and the architects to provide some of the answers that we have. There are plenty. So this is why I made the call that, to move it until February 12th or 13th. But what we can add, we can say, we can send the application, the grant application. I want to sign a letter as a mayor of support. And then when the council approves the resolution on February 12th, 13th, we can add that resolution to the package. So I don't think that because we are sending the resolution 2 weeks later, it's going to make a big dent in the application grant. So, but yeah.
Where are these people, Mayor? Where are these people that are not in support?
One of those, the concern is, and it's a big concern of some of those people, and we need to respect that, is the cost of the, it's a $50 million project.
But who are we going to call when we have an emergency? I need nothing but a firefighter or a police officer. I need nothing. I don't need Starbucks. I need nothing in this city. When I call 911, my barn's on fire or someone's breaking in my house. Give me a police officer, give me a firefighter, nothing else. I don't want to hear about anything.
I understand your position, but you need to be also sure that
these people work for me. They represent me. I am a 5th generation rooted in this city.
I understand your position, but you also need to understand other people's position and perspective.
Are we all in agreement in this
Well,
room?
I got a question for the mayor.
The city's going to continue to grow.
Just a minute, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Has your council as a whole seen this presentation?
Yeah, they have been. Some of them they have been coming to the meetings.
No. I'm talking about, has it been a situation where you have called a special meeting for some reason, and they were asked and almost told as a city to come in and listen to this? And I can't help believe that if anybody had any kind of a question about why this wouldn't work, their answers would be in a meeting like that. I have to agree. We got to, this deadline scares me, but I'm sure you're going to work around it, and that'll be okay. You'll work around it. But it comes down to the vote on the council. That's where the rubber hits the road. And they've got to know everything that we saw here tonight.
The council, we had a meeting when on December 12th, there was a presentation not like this. Some of the council members are coming to these meetings. Some of them they're gonna go on Saturday. There is another meeting.
Okay.
So some of the council members work full time, so they cannot come to to all of the meeting. So this is, some of them are going on Saturday, but yes, they are aware of some of the design, they are aware of the cost. This is why they are asking, they have a lot of questions that they need to be answered, and so far those questions, they are going to be answered next week. And I think, this is what I'm going to tell you, and I hope you understand my position as a mayor. This is a big project, okay? And a big project like this, if we need to understand that the council will ask a lot of questions. They're going to be, like you are asking a lot of good questions tonight, okay? But the council has also a lot of questions, and and it's logical because this is a big project. I have been part of other projects where we have the same issue. We have to, sometimes delay 1 or 2 months because council was asking questions, or we need more, more documents, more, But this is what I say. I think this is a good exercise because if we want people in this community to embrace the facility and to be able that next year or in 2 years when you receive your tax bill, you're going to be paying more taxes, the people are already embrace this and I say, yeah, we need it. This is why the council wants more outreach, more, involvement of the community in the decision. That's it. And I think we need to, I think as a mayor, we need to, also I need to respect my council. They are the one who has the vote. And, and to be honest, all the yes votes are not there yet. And if I bring this resolution next week, it's going to fail. So do I want that as a council, as a mayor? No. So as a mayor, I'm trying to do my best to see how the two bodies, the police department and the council, can work together and compromise on how to move this project forward. This is where we are.
Our council votes public.
Huh?
Our council votes public.
Oh yeah, everything is public.
What is that opposition? Is it cost?
The
Is it
cost,
mainly
the cost is the one, and also if we really need to have this big training facility, so but it's the cost. It's, the council already approved $35 million. So they are comfortable with that number and maybe going $5 million more. And this was the expectation that this building will become a $40 million. But it came what it was, before the first week of December when we got the last estimate, the final one, the revised. I was hoping for a $41 million, and then it said $49 million. I said, wow, you know what I mean? So because the other thing that we need to think about this is phase one. Phase two is the renovation of City Hall. So I am looking as a mayor that I will need a couple of more millions dollars in 3 or 4 years to renovate all the space that they are gonna empty. So I hope you understand that why it's important that we have this discussion, the council asks questions, because this is phase one of this project. Phase two is coming in 3 years, and also it's gonna have, I don't know yet how much it's gonna cost, but for sure it's gonna cost a couple of $1 million too. So, but
Well, hopefully we get a $5 million grant from the state and.
a lot for the sustainable component. There are a lot of rebate from the federal government that the city will qualify, because if we are building a building that is sustainable, up to maybe 30% of some of those costs. So maybe some of those sustainable features can be offset with those tax credit. Well, they are not tax credit for the municipality, but this is how I call it, so people understand. That now municipality can apply to those rebates too.
But we realize with every day, month, week we wait, building doesn't get cheaper. The price is just going to go up and up and up. I mean, 2016 it was X amount of numbers, and we haven't done anything.
I know, but some of these big projects take time.
We didn't put money into the police department. They did not fund 100% police department. I was in front of them 2 years in a row for the budget. And they didn't. And I kept on saying, we have to have services.
We need services.
And guess what?
Even anti-cops call cops first when their house is getting broken
Let's
into.
see.
I mean,
the city council, there's the good ones, but most of them are the puppets, okay? And they're playing the puppets game, okay? I've watched it, and there's people that laugh at it, because these people on the city council are working for the citizens and the taxpayers. And, we had our chance to put money aside more than just this past 2 years. I'm retired now, so I can stick my neck out and get chopped off. And I'm going to end it there because I got questions. Sir?
Yeah.
That $23, if you go back up there, a month, does not include running the department. And why do you guys put $23.26? My everything I buy or invest in or I get a loan, I want to know how much it's going to cost me per year, since it's going to go on our tax roll. What would 12 months be like that for? Times 23.
This is $23 in an average home. It depends on the value of your home too.
Well, the average home is they're going to charge putting everybody that, because they think everybody's average, except me. So if you do 12 times 23, okay?
So it's roughly $279 per year.
estimate how much, you said 500,000 to run the system here? Okay. You got a thing there. Divide by how many people we live in Fitchburg right now?
34,000.
Okay, times 34.
Times 34? Divided by
Oh, divide. I'm a country boy.
16,000.
Okay. You put that all together, so you have roughly under $300 it's going to cost per taxpayer. Okay. Because I'm always thinking, that we got a pretty good system. But I'm retired, and money doesn't grow on trees, especially my apple trees. I can live with that, 300 extra. Because we're spending a lot of money on the city hall, the city complex and the library. This is a brand new building, so it shouldn't cost us that much.
So let's.
Just of time, let's talk about, just as a reminder, what we're making an investment. Clearly, this is an expensive investment, all right? But I'm telling you that this is an investment that's going to have returns, and we talked about them at the beginning. So enhanced and more efficient service. And this comes in a number of ways. And unfortunately, some of these things you can't put a dollar amount on. I can't tell you how much crime we prevent. I can't. I don't know how much crime we prevent. There are certain things in law enforcement. This isn't a business where we're producing things. I can't tell you some numbers on these things. But I can assure you that there will be a return on your investment in the way of enhanced and more efficient service. A more capable and competent police force. We talked about training, right? So more capable and competent police force is going to reduce risk and loss and bad outcomes from happening. It's going to meet our current and future space needs. We talked about the costs associated with having to redo something to add on later. That's just going to get more expensive. Any new project from now on is just going to get more expensive, right? Increased retention. We talked about this. More experience and hiring savings. I can put a dollar amount, well over $100,000 from the time we recruit someone, hire them, train them, put them through the background investigation, all these types of things. That has a dollar amount. That costs a lot of money. We have had over almost our entire department turnover with the number of people that have come through our department in the last 10 years. It's incredible, and it's for a variety of reasons. Yeah.
What's the total cost that you guys have lost with the previous 10 years? Given the training experience that they've had over that 10 years too, have you guys totaled that up?
I could tell you just with 6 individuals that went to the Dane County Sheriff's Office, a combined easily over
80 years of experience?
80 years of experience that left for the Dane County Sheriff's Office, who's paying significantly more. We invested many hours of both regular training and specialized training in those individuals. Those individuals were instructors, and they go for an agency that pays more money.
And I think that's something that the council needs to realize, that you can't put a price tag on that years of experience. You just can't. I mean, you're looking at potentially millions of dollars for that one officer that has 10, 15 years of experience.
Absolutely. Potential savings through reduction in risk and loss. We've talked about revenue from training components, helps offset some costs and additional space for the community. So there's a return on that. There's spaces at a premium if you're looking to have a meeting, if you're a community group, or you want to have some sort of an event, that's at a premium. So let's talk about some summary items here. So key points, again, we have exceeded capacity. There's no place to go. City Hall has exceeded capacity. We have our IT department is working in a basement with no windows. It's not designed for an office space. It's our old emergency operations center. We have 4 individuals. There's no more office space. So we talk about adding positions. There was a study that was done, a staffing study for a 5-year staffing plan to add individuals in various departments. There's no place for them to go, or for the majority of them to go. So we want to add people. They have no place to go. Fastest growing city in the state. And this is a city project that benefits the community. Again, this discussion has been going on for a long time, and we hope that it lasts a long time. Negative impacts. I don't want to focus on the negative, and I certainly don't want to end on the negative, but continued cost escalation. We were talking today, just delaying things a month here and there, that can increase the cost. Certainly delaying it by a year is going to definitely increase the cost. Decrease in service level and efficiencies. a repeat of our current situation. So again, we've, less than 15 years into the building that we're in, we identify the fact that we're already outgrowing it. No space for new staff, and increased recruitment and retention issues. This is something that's important to new officers. This is a picture of one of our new officers getting his badge penned by his father. Okay, and I'm sharing this picture. This is the first time I've shared this picture in this presentation, but it's meaningful for me for a couple of reasons, right? Parents in here? Anyone have children? Growing up, they want to go and become a police officer. You have your reservations about that. You see the news, you see all the things that are going on in the community, and you want them to, be something else, but they're convinced they want to be a police officer. They call you up and they say, hey, Mom, Dad, Fitchburg Police Department's hiring, they're offering me a job. What are some things that you're going to think about before you trust the City of Fitchburg and the City of Fitchburg Police Department to take care of your child? Are you going to think about the investment that department's making in your son or daughter and the care that they're taking care of them, the prioritization of them? Unlike other buildings, this building is not built for the public. This is not a library. This is not a building where we're going to host people, ideally, with the exception of our training area. I don't want to see most of you there in a way that we see a lot of people come through our facility, if you know what I'm saying. Usually it's in a holding cell or as a victim of a crime. I don't want to see any of that. So we're not building a space where we hope that you're in there routinely. But I am building a space for our brand new officers. I am building a space that speaks volumes about the commitment that our community, our police department has. We have a plan. We're going to invest in the training of our new officers. You're going to come to the Fitchburg Police Department and we're going to develop you. We ask new people when they come through the doors, how'd you hear about us? What do you know about Fitchburg? I know absolutely nothing about Fitchburg, but I saw that you were hiring. If you go outside of Dane County, I can tell you not very many people know where Fitchburg is. When I call on the phone, people say, Pittsburgh? What are you talking about? So in an era where a new officer candidate can literally pick where they want to go, just because of the crisis that we are in. Lieutenant McCarthy, how many positions are we down right now?
6.
So we have 6 vacancies, but when you account for things like officer injury, FMLA, people having children, that sort of thing, we're down, I believe, 18 right now over 55.
18
of our 55
positions
sworn officers we are short right now.
that don't count towards the schedule, is what we're saying.
Out of
so
55.
We have people in field training, people at the academy, they don't count towards the schedule. It usually takes roughly about 2 years for a new hire to actually count towards the schedule and get onto the road. So that's, I mean, yes. Yeah.
So my point being, though, is how do you stand apart? How do you stand apart? How do you make yourself different? Because if I go to a career fair and I say, oh, I'm hiring for a police officer position, next to me is Sun Prairie, next to me is Middleton, Verona, Madison. Oh, who pays the most? Well, all of these other agencies do. Okay, what kind of facility do you have? Oh, we have a facility that's 20-some years old. How do we stand apart? And so anything that is going to have double duty, it's going to have double impact, it's going to be an investment in our community, it's going to provide better service, it's going to check all these boxes. To me, that's something worth investing in. And you look at top high school athletic talent, and they're going to go and make this big show of which school they're going to commit to for football, and they go on tours and national visits. Do you think that they pick the school where the coach is a really nice guy, but their facilities are super run down, they don't have a weight room, a good weight room, they don't have a nutrition program? Or are they going to pick the school that has the best of the best? That clearly shows, not only is it flash, but it shows a commitment, it shows a plan, it shows an investment in the people that these parents are trusting us to take care of and develop. We are responsible for that, not only as police leaders, but as a community. And when our community expects the best from the police in a moment's notice to make perfect decisions in a flash of a second, knowing that that officer's life is going to change for the rest of their lives if they're forced to make a decision, a critical decision, an incident, don't we want the best for that person? Don't we want to set them up for success?
I just wanted to point out a point you made that I don't want lost, that I thought might be beneficial to sort of sell the project. It's, you said something about, it's a facility where you don't want to host people, right? And so in my mind, I was thinking, okay, what can they do so that they can be revenue generating at the same time? But unlike other public facilities, say, the library or the city hall, where they can perhaps have a room where they can actually rent out for wedding or reception and things like that. Law enforcement building can't do that, right? It's not suitable. So I think that's one way of thinking of that. I'm coming from different background. So I'm thinking if I were to think of investing in this facility and know ahead of time that it is a facility that is limited in its ability to generate revenue, or also it's limited in ability to gain outside funding, right? Because you can't go and get donors to donate without agenda to police department. So things like that, I think it's important, for a lay person such as myself to know, right? It's never dawned on me. I was thinking, oh, maybe they can rent out their roof to do, wedding.
It'd be a very unique wedding experience.
Right. So there's things like that. There's not like no terrorists, right? You can't be like no terrorists or things like that.
The thing that worries me is you hear on the news of mass resignations of police departments because the city is not putting the funds needed and backing the police departments, and officers have a choice.
It's true.
They can say, screw it, I'm gonna go 20 miles away
Am I
where they're
fine?
paying it.
Am I fine?
So I really hope Fitchburg is not one of those cities that is not going to invest in its police department. We certainly have done it with the fire department, but we can't let ourselves be in that situation where good officers, and we're already seeing it, sheriff's department's paying more money. It's a family decision for an officer. Where am I going to get my revenue? I've got a family too. If this city doesn't invest and show a commitment, I fear that we're going to have difficulty maintaining officers and keeping them around, and it's going to be this revolving door. And so I hope, Mayor and the City Council, that you guys really think about how this goes.
This City Council has been very supportive of the police department. We have, if you look, all the resolution coming forward, project, equipment, vehicle. Last year we implemented the referral bonuses. We provided 2 retention bonuses, So the council already approved $35 million.
Those have all been
So
reactionary though. We didn't upfront
But there
say
is-
we have to stay competitive with our police department wages.
I understand,
So
but there
people
are,
left and then we went, oh, we better do some retention bonuses.
I'm gonna tell you something. There are things that they are out of our control, that there is a smaller pool of people coming to the law enforcement in the last couple of years, yes, but it's not only a Fitchburg issue, it's not a Dane County issue, it's not Wisconsin, it's a nationwide issue. So those things, as a city of Fitchburg, we cannot control that because we have a position here open, but we don't have sometime. In the past, there were 200 applicants for a position. Now we get 20. It's too many. So we are dealing with that pool of candidates that they are decreasing to. But it's not only Fitchburg. So that one I want you guys to understand that it is not a Fitchburg issue, but also. The council has already approved $35 million for this project, so 35 is a good support. Yes, the building is costing a little bit more, and this is why the council is asking for more questions. And you will appreciate that your common council, where this one was another project, and it came like a $15 million more, you will allow your common council to ask all the questions to determine why, how, and how we are going to pay for that. This is the role, and this is what they are doing right now. We are delaying this in 1 month. That's it. You know what I mean?
So I can expect a vote next month?
It's gonna be, the resolution is gonna be on the agenda for February 13th, yes.
February 13th?
Yeah.
Mark?
I want to thank you guys for a great presentation, because you did a great job. And I support, well, if we need a facility, I support it 100%. I don't want you to get the idea. I just want to make sure that we are as frugal as we can possibly be. And I'm really concerned about the sheriff's department paying $7,000 more, and we lost 6. I heard 7 because a friend of mine's with the sheriff's department. And that's a lot of money for a family. For a new officer, $7,000 is a whole lot of money. So we're going to have to address that issue along with, yes, a facility will help retain. There's no question about that. And you can sell that to some of your new recruits. But after the new recruit gets the training, will $7,000 in wages still be enough to pull them away? And I've been on the Heartland Credit Union Board for 25 years, and we went through this. We trained every teller for every credit union in the Dane County area. And finally, I and a couple of the board members said, we got to stop this. We got to stop the bleeding, and we got to pay some more to retain our staff. And we've been able to accomplish that. But we have to be careful. The example you used, it's going to cost X amount of dollars for an average home. Well, awful lot of people sitting in this room don't live in an average home. And what's it going to do to the farmland for those taxes? And those of you who aren't farmers, $4.50 corn doesn't leave a heck of a lot of money left for paying taxes. And so that's my concerns.
It's a concern of,
Is there anyone in here that's not concerned about money? And I'm not trying to make light of your comment here, but I get my tax bill. I live in the city of Madison. I'm concerned about it. Everyone is concerned about money. We are aware that money is a concern. That is, as we're designing this, we're thinking about what is the feedback from the public going to be with this decision. We are, on a daily basis, we are trusted to go out there and make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. And so we are very accustomed to that. I just want to back up. $7,000 is not even close to the difference in salary. I mean, we have officers that are leaving the Fitchburg Police Department making $85,000 a year, going to the sheriff's office making $120,000 a year. Okay? So it's even more. So that's a completely separate issue for a separate day. This is one small component of that equation as far as keeping people here. The other component, and to the mayor is correct, there has been support here from elected officials. I would love to see a lot more support from our community. I know there are individuals that are out here that support us. One of, in a national a study that was just published, that one of the biggest influences on officer recruiting and retention is the public's support of their police department, with the way that the police departments have been communicated about. And some people say that communities get the police department they deserve by the way that they're going to treat or talk about or discuss their police department. So it's not just elected officials, it's the community. We've had public meetings throughout the community trying to touch every neighborhood possible. We get 1 or 2 people that show up. But when there's a crisis, they expect us to show up. And if they don't think that we handled it appropriately or that something needs to be done, we will pack a room full of people. But no one wants to come. We don't have a lot of interest in people coming to hear about the great things that we're doing. Again, that news headline, the police did everything right today. And so it's a community conversation about what are we going to prioritize. And it's the same thing I would expect any of our police officers to do in their home community, including mine. What do we want to prioritize as a city? There's a lot of competition out there for city funds and what are people's priorities. And of course, everything's going to cost more, but it's only going to cost more and more and more if we wait on a project like this. And so,
all these $120,000, they are going to Dane County, we are paying that salary because we receive a bill with a 17% increase in Dane County taxes, you know what I mean? So, that one was another shock too, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show
how intense the competition is and what places will do to fill their ranks to meet the expectations of the community. We have to provide a service right now, and we may only have, under certain hours of the day, we might only have 3 officers that are out there serving our 35 square miles. And if that's not alarming to people, when our numbers should be going up, when I started in 2009, our minimums were 3 officers. If that's not alarming to people that we haven't been able to get that minimum number up with the population increase that we've talked about and the addition of the town of Madison, these are all priorities. And we are electing people to make those decisions. They have hard decisions to make. I'm not taking anything away from them, but we have to think about this as a community, as a team, police department, the common council, and our community, and really let that discussion happen about what's important. So I appreciate that. We're running over here. I'm going to ask some rhetorical questions here. I think I know the answers. I hope I know the answers. Do we want to be prepared for the future of a growing city? Do we want to ensure a safe environment that reduces risk for employees, visitors, and those in our custody? We have to keep everybody safe. Us, you, the people that we put into our custody. Do we want to address environmental impacts of police vehicles and facilities? Do we want to create a space that fosters increased community engagement? We can't host a meeting like this at our police department right now. We have no space for it. Do we want to ensure our police personnel are highly competent in order to meet the high expectations of our community? Every day those expectations increase, and rightly so. We need to be able to train to meet those expectations. And do we want to attract the most talented workforce and keeping our valued employees, and most importantly, keeping those valued employees well? Our number one resource, we can work, in a variety of conditions, and we do right now. And I can tell you right now that those conditions that we work in have an impact on people. When there's very little privacy, there's very little place. If we have a critical incident and our peer support chaplains come in, there's very little place for those private interactions to happen after someone's responded to a critical incident. And often, with as busy as we become and as few officers that we have, we're experiencing those critical incidents more and more and more and more. So let's do everything. And is anyone, are we all yeses here? Have I done a halfway decent job? Yes, sir.
I've got one last thing to say. As I leave this meeting, I got to think, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to express my enthusiasm about what I've just seen? Well, first thing, Saturday morning, I tell you, I got a bunch of guys from Fitchburg I have coffee with. Every Saturday morning we have breakfast. I'm going to talk about this. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the council meeting. And I'm going to identify who's on that council that is not thinking the way I am. It'll show up. All you got to do is listen. It'll be there.
And I hope they come to my house before theirs when
Yep.
we call 911 at the same time.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do, and I encourage you to think about this. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call my council person. If you don't know who your council person is, you can go online, and your district is there, and the name and the phone number is there. Like I said before, the rubber hits the road right here, and it's the council. If I understood correctly what I read between the lines, what our mayor said, and I didn't like to hear the idea we got this January 31 deadline we missed. But we'll make it up. But I have a feeling, and I haven't said anything, she knew she didn't have the votes. She knew she didn't have the votes because there were questions out here that weren't answered. I'm kind of glad she did. I didn't like losing the deadline. But for it to go on to a negative vote at this stage that they would be voting on would have been critical. So if I read it right, it's part of it. But I encourage you to think about what you're going to do when you leave this meeting.
Just for the record, he has contacted his alder.
Just to clarify, first time homeowner, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but I'm talking to my neighbors about this. Is that a tiered payment system? So the more your house costs, the more taxes you pay, the more you will pay versus, okay.
But also, the more population increase.
Yes. And the less your house is, it'll be less than that. I recognize that, 100%.
There's not many farms you mow that.
Nope, I completely recognize that. But you gotta put it in, you gotta explain it all, I guess. Yes, sir.
One last thing. Senior moment, sorry.
Well, maybe you'll be able to remember after you.
Perfect segue here. So, perfect segue, so you can strike the top part of this. The next step after we come to a agreed upon schematic design is design development. But here are a couple of things that you can do. As you can share your feedback and comments via this email address. If you scan this QR code, or if you go to our website, you'll go to a landing page that has all of this information. It has links for the recordings for pretty much every council meeting related to any of these actions. You can see the resolutions where council approved the architect, the construction management firm. As much information, the previous presentations we put on, it's all out there. There's also a form you can fill out to share your comments. Those comments are going to be compiled, and we're actually going to change that, but they're all going to go to all our elected officials. Did you remember?
I encourage you. I know it's not going to be up for approval for schematic design, but I would encourage anyone, if you're really looking for something to do on January 9th after you get home from work, or if you have some downtime, to still watch that common council meeting or attend in person. I mean, absolutely. That's the purpose behind these public outreach meetings. That's the purpose of our community police district meetings that we've had since January, is to speak with citizens, the people that we actually serve, that actually have the voice behind the elders that are elected to speak on your behalf. Not necessarily on their behalf, but on the behalf of the citizens that their constituents in their districts. So I'd encourage you to show up to those meetings, to speak on non-agenda items or agenda items for your 3 minutes. So.
All right. He's going to keep it short here. We got time for...
I tried to get as many people as I knew about this and just show up. There was 3. Out of 3, I showed up at 2. And I says to them, and I told 2 of the guys, told them, I says, I better not hear you ever bitch and complain, because the only time, if you show up, you have the right to complain. You know, and I tell everybody that. I says, these meetings are for you, for the taxpayers of Fitchburg, to find out stuff and to sit there and complain and get answers. And so, more or less, most of the guys that I was talking to, they didn't show up. So if they start complaining like, oh my God, 50, I got to go, what are you complaining about? You never showed up.
Well, we'll get their information from you after so we can act if they complain. One last thing.
If this is correct, that's not going to be on the agenda because the mayor has removed it.
Yeah, that's why I said strike the top part of that.
Yeah, so what related to this would be at the agenda?
There's going to be an additional presentation.
Okay.
After our discussion today with Pepper Construction, FGM, we're going to explain some of the things that we've modified from the plan, maybe some add alternates to the plan that might be a reduction in the cost.
Will there be public comments at that?
There's public comments at any common council meeting, so feel free to show up.
Thank you for everyone for taking time out of your night. Thank you.